What's up YouTube, welcome back to Celio's Network, the channel dedicated to providing you with competitive Pokemon TCG content. Today I'm taking a look at my Seismitoad Garbodor list for the expanded format. It provides a powerful lock on your opponent where they cannot use items or abilities when it's fully operating. We have special conditions, energy removal, damage modification, and we can remove our own damage. A lot of things are happening here. So let's start out with the main Pokemon himself, Seismitoad-EX. We're playing 4 of this Pokemon, 100 HP Water type EX. I will mention that there's sort of a power creep here. I feel like if this was printed today, it might have 190 HP as a GX, and maybe it would also have potentially a useful GX attack on it. We're only using its one attack Quaking Punch here. For a DCE, it does 30 damage, and your opponent cannot play any item cards from his or her hand during their next turn. It does have a hefty 3 retreat cost, but once we get the lock going, we're not going to want to be moving this out of the active anyway too often. So yeah, Quaking Punch, 30 damage, your opponent can't play items. Very good. The only ways around this are Pokemon Ranger, which is a supporter that I don't believe is going to be a very popular tech at first. Maybe if Seismitoad makes a large splash at Anaheim, we'll see Pokemon Ranger teched in at Dallas. And the other is a Marowak, which prevents effects done to the player who has the Marowak out, which is also not very popular at all. So in most cases, your opponent can't stop Quaking Punch from preventing their item usage. Next, we have the other half of the lock, Garbodor. We have a 2-2 line with 2 of the Garbage Collection Trubbish. Garbage Collection is worth noting that it can put a card from your discard pile on top of your deck. For colorless, we're only using DCE. A lot of times this ability isn't going to be worth wasting a DCE on because we have cards that can really get back anything we want. Other than Pokemon, since we have a fair amount of all the Pokemon we're using, Seismitoads are going to be the one getting knocked out most of the time, so we don't really need Pokemon retrieval while playing 4 Seismitoad. So I thought the Trubbish was worth mentioning. And now the Garbodor with Garbotoxin. If this Pokemon has a Pokemon tool card attached to it, each Pokemon in play in each player's hand and each player's discard pile has no abilities. So while you have a Float Stone ideally on this Garbodor, neither you or your opponent can use abilities. So if you have Garbotoxin going and you have Quaking Punch going, your opponent can't use abilities or items. Your opponent notably cannot use Field Blower to remove the tool from Garbodor as long as you used Quaking Punch because it prevents them from items. So it is tricky to get around. Next we have one of our 2 backup attackers, Mewtwo-EX with 170 HP Psychic. We're going to be using this for X-Ball. 20 damage times the amount of energy attached to this Pokemon and the defending Pokemon. So this is good for either a big powered up Pokemon like maybe a Keldeo-EX and Archie-Stoice that you go in and swing for a bunch of damage, or against Buzzwole GX, because Buzzwole is weak to Psychic, and a Buzzwole with 3 energy can start running through our board, and Mewtwo will put a stop to that. Our other backup attacker, which is also a support Pokemon, is Energy Drive, Tapu Lele-GX with Energy Drive. This attack does 20 damage times the amount of energy attached to both Pokemon, but is not affected by weakness and resistance. So it is effectively Mewtwo-EX's X-Ball, but not affected by weakness and resistance. Tapu Lele-GX is mainly here for its Wonder Tag ability. When you play this Pokemon from your hand, you get to search for a supporter card. But it is worth noting that Energy Drive is a good backup attack. That's why I have it here classified as backup attack and a support Pokemon. We also have another Pokemon that can search for supporters, Jirachi-EX with Stellar Guidance, same ability as Lele, except it has almost half the HP and a non-usable attack. So you might think, why are we using this Pokemon? It's because Hoopa-EX can search for it with Scoundrel Ring. When you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench, you can search up to 3 Pokemon EX out. So this can get Seismitoad, Mewtwo, Jirachi, and Shaymin, which is very good for setting up, which is Shaymin-EX's ability, setup. When you play this card from your hand onto your bench, you may draw cards until you have 6 in your hand. So very good for trying to hit those DCE or lasers or whatever it might be that we're searching for. Usually we're digging for something, and Shaymin-EX helps us do that. So that is all for the Pokemon. On to the trainers. We have one Dowsing Machine to start off with as our ace spec. Discard 2 cards from your hand and put a trainer card from your discard pile into your hand. So we can get back any of these trainers we're about to look at with Dowsing Machine, which is very powerful. Also note, if you haven't been playing for too long and you don't know what ace specs are, you can only have one ace spec in your deck. One copy of the ace spec and only one ace spec in your deck. Just wanted to point that out in case you might have been confused on that. 2 Enhanced Hammer for getting rid of Special Energy. Zoroark GX decks, Drampa Garbodor decks, they use 4 DCEs usually. Drampa Garb uses some rainbows. Getting rid of Special Energy is very important. I'm only playing Enhanced Hammer. I did play some Crushing Hammers in a lot of testing games, and I found that I was using them against basic energy using decks that were already accelerating energy and recycling them, so the Crushing Hammer wasn't really doing all that much, and I wanted to put in more useful cards in its place. Then we have one Field Blower of our own. So this will usually be used to remove choice bands and belts and cards like that were placed down before our Quaking Punch started, or in a turn where we had a lull where we weren't able to Quaking Punch for some reason. We have a fair amount of counter stadium, so Field Blower usually won't be used for the stadium. And then we have 4 Hypnotoxic Laser. Very, very powerful card in the expanded format. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. Flip a coin if heads. Your opponent's active Pokemon is also asleep. This is very powerful because we also have 3 Virbank City Gym, which is a stadium that says put 2 more damage counters on poison Pokemon between turns. So that Hypnotoxic Laser is adding 3 damage between turns if you have the stadium out. Plus, it might be putting your opponent's Pokemon to sleep, and your opponent can't use items, and they can't use abilities. So you can see how this deck can get very annoying very quickly. We have 1 Special Charge to get back our Special Energy, since we are only playing Special Energy, which can be a problem if our opponent is doing something like a Faba Oranguru loop type deal and like a Zora control deck. I'm not sure how popular that's going to be yet, so I'm not going to worry about it until we see a meta form. But we do have Special Charge in case our energies get knocked out, or we have to discard them, or they get Enhanced Hammers, something like that. And note that we can actually use Special Charge twice because of Dowsing Machine. Any of these cards, just imagine that they have a potential +1 next to them because of Dowsing Machine. We have 4 Ultra Ball, pretty standard. Discard 2 cards from your hand if you do search your deck for a Pokemon. This is here instead of Nest Ball because we also have Garbotoxin, and we have all of these Pokemon with when you play from your hand effects. So Ultra Ball is definitely the way to go. We have 4 Versus Seeker. Put a supporter card from your discard pile into your hand. We're playing a lot of supporters, and in standard you can play less of your supporters because you can get them back with Versus Seeker. So we'll talk about that once we get to the supporter lines. For stadiums, we have 1 Parallel City, which is a very good stadium card. On the blue side, whoever is on the blue side can only have 3 benched Pokemon, and on the other side, the damage is reduced. It reduces damage done by grass, fire, and water. So if we reduce our opponent's Pokemon to 3 bench, our water Pokemon are doing 20 less damage, which isn't very good. But Parallel City can really limit a Zoroark player's bench, and then if we're also locking them, it stops them from getting back their executes and using Ultra Balls and Pokecom to get back more Pokemon, using trade to try to hit into more Pokemon or a replacement stadium. And then next turn we can just simply replace it with Virbank City Gym and get back to dealing a lot of damage with Quaking Punch and lasers. We also have tools, which I will mention before supporters. We have 3 Fighting Fury Belt and 3 Floatstone. I kind of favor Fighting Fury Belt for our Seismitoads over Choice Band because we are stopping them from getting knocked out, and our whole game plan is to use Quaking Punch for the entire game. So the longer our Seismitoads survive, the better. Speaking of our Seismitoads surviving, our first supporter here is actually Acerola. Put one of your Pokemon that has any damage counters on it and all cards attached to it into your hand, so you can actually effectively chain Seismitoads. Just heal 1, put up something with a Float Stone, put back down your Seismitoad, attach DC, attach Fighting Fury Belt, put it back up, and start Quaking Punching again. Sorry about that. I did miss our other our other tool card, which I just mentioned, Floatstone. The Pokemon this card is attached to has no retreat cost. This is usually going to be attached to a Garbodor, so because of its hefty retreat cost, it has free, and Garbotoxin will be active because of it. Next, for our supporters, we have 1 Colress. Shuffle your hand into your deck and draw a number of cards equal to the number of benched Pokemon. So sometimes you'll be shuffle drawing for 10 if you and your opponent both have a full bench, which is very, very good. We have 1 Cynthia. Shuffle your hand and draw 6. Early game, maybe you don't want to end your opponent, and you both have small benches, so Colress is bad. So we have the 1 Cynthia for situations like that. 1 Faba, which is new from Lost Thunder. Choose a Pokemon tool or special energy card attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon or stadium card in play and put it into the Lost Zone. So this is very, very good against decks that are only using special energy. If you can chain Fabas with Versus Seekers or Lusamines or what have you. Just get rid of their energy cards, and then they can't even get them back with something like Resource Management, Guru, or Special Charge if they're able to use items. Next, we have 1 Guzma. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active Pokemon, and then you do the same. Just your everyday Gust effect like Lysander, except you also get the switch. And since we have 3 Float Stones, we usually don't mind switching anyway. We can just retreat back to the original active if we wanted it. 1 Hiker, which is a cool card that I've been trying out. Look at the top 5 cards of either player's decks. You'll usually look at your opponent's and choose one of the cards. That player shuffles the others back into their deck, then put the card you chose on top of that deck. So if you have your opponent in the ideal lock, they can't use abilities, they can't use items, you're poisoning them and maybe putting them to sleep. You have a turn where you don't need a shuffle draw, you don't need to heal your Seismitoad, you don't want a Guzma, there's no energy to remove. Maybe you use Hiker, so you can look at your opponent's top 5, make sure they don't have something as their top deck next turn that can potentially help them get out of this dead draw or this lock or whatever it is that they are in currently that is making you win the game. So you can choose a dead card, maybe an evolution of a Pokemon they already have the evolution out, or an item card that they can't use, and you put it on top of their deck to effectively say you're also not drawing anything good next turn. We have 2 Lusamine, which are very good in control decks. Put 2 in any combination of supporter and stadium cards from your discard pile into your hand. Stadium cards is very important. Basically, because of Lusamine, you can get back a Lusamine with it and one other card sometimes. So you have essentially an endless supply of your supporters and stadiums. Next, we have 3 N. Shuffle. Each player shuffles their hand into their deck and then draws a card for each of their remaining prize cards. Very good in a control deck where we are not taking the lead usually. So if our opponent goes to 3, 2, or even 1 prize cards while we still have 6, put the lock on them, Quaking Punch, Garbotoxin, and you can actually win games that way. 2 Professor Sycamore, discard your hand, draw 7. Just very good draw support, nothing too much to add there. Definitely worth having around. Shadow Triad, put a Team Plasma card from your discard pile into your deck. We could get Colress, or we could get Hypnotoxic Laser, which is usually what we'll be grabbing. The Hypnotoxic Lasers are important. It's part of our damage modification, so it's good to be able to get them back. And last but not least, we have Team Flare Grunt. Discard an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. Super simple, and it can be a basic or special energy as long as it's on your opponent's active. And then we wrap up the deck with 4 DCE, and that's our only energy. So this is the deck. I really like playing this deck. I know sometimes it's not fun for the opponent because you're locking them, but it's really satisfying when you get that perfect lock off. And there's a lot of control options in here as well. So it's not a mill deck like we've been seeing a lot of with control variants. It's actually control. We're stopping our opponent from doing things, which is kind of hard in standard format right now because Garbodor has rotated. We don't have a lot of locking options in standard, but expanded has a ton, and it's a lot of fun to experiment with. So I hope you guys liked this deck profile. Let me know if you want to see more expanded deck profiles because it's not something I historically have done on this channel. But we have a lot of expanded events coming up. I'm pretty excited about expanded. Seems pretty fun. So I do want to do more expanded deck profiles. Make sure you check out flipsidegaming.com for free articles written by yours truly, and also use code CELIO, all caps, for 10% off of your next order, $10 or more. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Links are in the description below. I've been streaming 5 to 7 days a week on Twitch. Make sure you come and check those out for more gameplay with the decks that I profile on here. Hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.